douchebag with a gun here. There are a few things y'all should know about me. For one, I am a douchebag.
Do I really want to do this right now? Does the situation want to get situated right now?
Now, if you hadn't already picked up on that one, you may want to consider Hooked on Phonics.
Phonics works for me.
I am also a sucker for nostalgia. And worst of all, I am easily the most fiscally irresponsible person that I know.
I am never going to financially recover from this.
And so this video is about me doing something really stupid with my money. A little backstory. I first got into firearms around 2010, so I was, by all standards, pretty late to the game. I've made up for a lot of lost time by buying pretty much everything that I could, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, when I first got into guns, I was all about pistols. I had a ton of handguns and didn't really have much interest in long guns for some reason. But when I finally decided I wanted to get my first rifle, I wanted it to be an AR-15, America's rifle. And I didn't want just any AR-15, I wanted whatever was considered to be the best. But I was too stupid to research anything myself. So my brother Dick had mentioned that Sig Sauer had recently released the 5.16 to much acclaim. They had all their slick promotional videos showing the thing getting dunked in mud and sand and pouring cement all over it and running it over with trucks and all that ridiculousness. And the gun just kept humming. Well, I was easily impressed, being a douchebag and all. So I ran to my local gun shop and paid MSRP for it, whatever that was at the time. Well, I owned the rifle for maybe 2 years, and I shot it a good amount, but I never really loved it. For one, it was very front heavy. Back in 2010, I was kind of a pussy and could barely pick up a 12-ounce bottle of beer without wincing in pain.
Holy hell, son, you're about as useful as a cock-flavored lollipop.
So I had spent my youth playing with plastic toy guns before graduating to paintball, so I had little to no experience with black rifles. And I had it in my stupid brain that they should be all lightweight and handy. A myth that was only reinforced by watching Military Arms Channel videos at the time, where the 7-foot-tall Tim would talk about how light every goddamn gun was. Anyway, so my brother Dick bought a standard AR-15 from Stag Arms, and that one was just a gas impingement, very typical base model. And when I shot that, I realized how front heavy this guy was. So after a few years, I sold the SIG and used the money to buy some other overpriced shit that I may or may not even still own these days. Well, that's a great story, douche. What the fuck is your point? Well, my point is that almost 10 years later, I was sitting around getting drunk and scouring some porn sites when I accidentally clicked on the Sig Sauer webpage. Admittedly, I had been stalking the SIG page for quite some time on the hunt for the MCX Virtus upper receiver group. I happened to scroll down to the bottom of the page with the uppers on it, and lo and behold, there was the SIG 5.16 upper receiver for sale. So I took a long pull from my glass of whiskey, pulled out the credit card, and bought myself one. So if y'all ain't ever heard of buyer's remorse, it's when you wake up after a powerful good whiskey binge to your goddamn dog barking at the doorbell and a FedEx guy with a package that requires an adult signature, only to find out that the box contains the upper receiver of a gun you sold 10 fucking years ago.
Stupid is, stupid does, Mrs. Blue.
So here we go. My bad decisions equal your entertainment. So let's go over this puppy from ass to mouth, because that's how I roll. On the ass end of this guy is a Magpul MOE SL stock. Nothing really special about this stock, but I will point out that it actually fits really nicely and has a lot less wobble than some of the more expensive Magpul options. So this might be one of my favorites, actually. The lower is a Anderson lower. It's no frills, built likely on a CMMG parts kit, because that's generally what I use, although I think I've bought a couple of Daniel Defense lower parts kits over the years. Doesn't really matter. But I have used CMMG parts kits for the lowers of a lot of builds over the years, and they work just fine. Get the job done. So if the fat guy from CMMG is watching this video, go ahead and slide in my DMs and let's talk about sponsorships and shit. Safety is a battle arms development, and yes, it is ambidextrous. By the way, if you watch my BRN 180 video I released recently, a lot of this probably sounds familiar. This is a different lower receiver, but you'd never know it. Anyway, the grip is a Magpul MOE. You've seen these on a lot of my builds, and I just tend to gravitate to them. The trigger is an ALG, and by now you've seen me post multiple videos showing the trigger pull and shit, and I'm gonna do it again, because why not? Okay, so now let's talk about this upper. The 516 was developed by at least one of the same engineers that developed the H&K 416. The end result is a gun that features a lot of the same elements of the HK 416, but with the improvements that they wanted to implement over at HK, but weren't allowed due to some bureaucracy and some bullshit. Exactly what those differences are is beyond me. The gun uses a short stroke gas piston design, which Sig claims is the secret sauce to all the gun's reliability and solves every problem that an AR-15 ever had. Now, you ask me, that's all bullshit, but hey, whatever. The piston design would live on to a degree with the Sig MCX, which has since replaced the 516 in their catalog. The bolt carrier is proprietary, but otherwise the gun uses standard AR bolts, firing pin, cam pin, etc., etc. We'll crack it open. A bolt carrier is pretty modestly skeletonized. They've definitely relieved some weight out of here, and not really sure what the reasoning for that is, other than to lighten up portions of the gun, which kind of cracks me up given that this whole thing is heavy as shit. But it is very well made. The bolt carrier itself is chrome lined, and other than that, really nothing special to talk about. This isn't labeled as MP and all that other jazz, but these are not military contract bolts at this point, so I wouldn't expect it to be. While we're up here, I have a Radium Raptor charging handle. This did not ship with it. It shipped with a regular mil-spec charging handle, but that wasn't ambidextrous enough for me, so I put in the Radium, which I tend to really like these guys. Now, the barrel is 14.5 inches, and the muzzle brake is pinned and welded in place. I'm assuming this is why these things were for sale, is because nobody wanted to buy a pin and welded muzzle brake on one of these uppers. And I don't know why I did, because, well, I do know why I did, because I was drunk. But this is a 3-prong flash hider that makes the, it's not that bad, but it will make the tingy noise when you shoot it. And if I really wanted to get that off of there, it's going to take some work, because they did a pretty nice job of grinding that down. While I'm still talking about the barrel, it is chambered in 5.56 NATO, and it has a 1-in-7 twist. The upper does have chrome-lined chamber and bore, and otherwise this thing is just built like a tank, as you would expect from 2010 technology. chore. Anyhow, Handguard, like I said, is old school 1913 rails on all four sides, so your typical quad rail. They did do a nice job with the inlays are helicoiled for where the screws are going to thread into mount it. It's basically just a clamshell. They do provide you with a little bit of a heat shield down here, aluminum heat shield, and so that may or may not help. I don't know. This thing does get pretty warm, but as a piston, it's not as bad as a DI. Now you can see the piston system here. I ain't gonna take it any further apart than this. It's kind of a bitch. But the barrel nut is pretty standard fare. The only problem is if you wanted to switch the handguard out, you're gonna need to find something that's gonna have a barrel nut that's gonna be compatible with fitting in. Let's see if I can zoom this thing in. You really don't have much clearance there for how you're gonna fit that barrel nut in with the piston. So you're not gonna be able to swap that out for too much, but I might be able to use another generic kind of handguard if I wanted to get rid of the quad rail. It'd have to probably be a clamshell style, but whatever. But this piston is very reminiscent of the design used by the BRN 180. And I actually mentioned this gun, and specifically when I was doing my BRN 180 video, just because I happened to remember this whole piston design. Well, I already owned this at the time, little insider secret there. But anyway, one thing you got to take notice of on this particular guy is this gas block. This thing is chunky, and it is friggin' massive. It does include a bayonet lug, because, you know, we're all out there stabbing people. And the gas regulator is built in up here. It does have, well, the manual claims it's got 4 positions. I've only been able to figure out 3. But it is regular, adverse conditions, suppressor setting, and then off, in case y'all are packing some rifle grenades. It does have a little section of 1913 rail up here in case you wanted to put a forward sight, which would be exposed underneath the handguard. So you would have that as an option. But this thing is just massive, and it adds all that weight to the front end, plus this big chunky piston system. So they could have done something to lighten that all up, but they didn't. So now I'm gonna have to put this fucker back together, and I'll just keep the camera rolling while I do it, if I can figure this out without cussing and pissing myself all too much.
A few moments later.
Okay, well, that was a freaking project. Before I wrap this all up, a couple extra things. I got an ACSS, Primary Arms ACSS Raptor. This is a 1:8 variable optic on the top. No real rhyme or reason as to why I particularly picked this optic for this particular setup, except that, I don't know, it kind of looks cool. No, that's a douchey reason. I don't know. I'll probably swap optics about 550 times on this beast before it's all said and done. This is in an American Defense mount, and some of y'all might actually recognize this ugly ass flashlight system here. I actually got this from Pablo, and he swapped it out for me once he upgraded his light setup that he has on his Scar 17. And I'm gonna, if I haven't already, I'll be posting a video on what he did to his Scar, because it's some pretty cool upgrades since you last saw it. So there you go. That's pretty much everything that you got going on here. So what do I think? Well, for one, I think I need to install one of those field sobriety check things on my credit card. I should have to blow into it in order for it to actually work. This was definitely a novelty purchase, and I don't know if I'll keep it for too long. On the one hand, it's the same exact operating system as the BRN 180 and the Bushmaster ACR in terms of the piston, but it uses the recoil assembly of a standard AR-15. It's a very well-made upper, and barrel is free-floated and has some good accuracy potential and all that jazz. Though the 1 in 7 twist is definitely better suited to the 55 grain Freedom seats. In short, There ain't nothing wrong with it, but I can't say that buying this was the proudest moment of my adulthood. Then again, it is also far from the worst gun I have ever bought. So that's all I have to say about this one. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to check out Douchebag's brother Dick using the link in the video description below. And remember, I don't know who you are out there, but I got a gun.